It's no secret that Lisa is one of everybody's favorite characters in Genshin Impact for, well, multiple reasons. But one of the best reasons is that she is a very strong free-to-play DPS. Today we'll be looking at different Lisa builds and comparing damage to find out which ones would be best fit for different team settings. My name is Praxophone, and I'll be your build guide. As a general disclaimer before we begin, not all the artifacts that are going to be used in this video are leveled to max. In this video, I tried to use artifacts that are extremely close in level to make sure that the data was as accurate as possible for comparisons. However, none of them are 16 except for the sets I already had pre-existing. This means that this video will serve less to showcase how much damage you can do, but rather compare different sets to find out which set does better damage in general. Today we'll be testing 3 sets that I think are the best for Lisa definitively. The sets we'll be working with today are the following. The Thundering Fury set is a set that increases electro damage by 15% with 2 pieces, and with 4 pieces increases damage caused by overload, electrocharge, and superconduct by 40%. Triggering such effects decreases elemental skill cooldown by 1 second, and it can only occur once every 0.8 seconds. The secondary effect is extremely strong if you're running Lisa as a secondary DPS in combination with a character that puts out a constant stream of one element, like Kaya's Burst or Xiangling's Ear Q. The second set we'll be working with is Wanderer's Troop, which with 2 pieces increases elemental mastery by 80, and with 4 pieces increases charged attack damage by 35% if the character uses a catalyst or a bow. Because we do spam Lisa's charge attack, this set does seem fairly good on paper. However, we won't be using the 4-piece set today because I feel that the 2-piece Thundering Fury set is way too strong to give up. Buffing overall electro damage is going to be much stronger in the long run than buffing one form of attack. The last set we'll be testing today is Gladiator set, and the 2-piece set increases your attack by 18%. The 4-piece set only applies to physical damage characters, so we won't be testing the second half of that set today. This set is replaceable with any other set that increases attack percent by 18% for the purpose of this video. With the set explanations out of the way, let's get into the damage tests. Again, just note that these artifacts aren't maxed, but most of them are close to each other in level. For the DPS tests, we did a normal string of Lisa's basic attack, it's just 4 hits, and then we tested her charged attack and her overload, elemental skill, and ult ticks. Each basic attack string took about 2.32 seconds, and we did 2 of them in a row, so we got about 4.46 seconds to divide our total damage by to get our DPS. All artifact sets today include an electro damage goblet. The first set we looked at today is the 2 Thundering Fury and 2-piece Gladiator set. Over 4.46 seconds, we got a total DPS of 878.4. With Lisa's fully charged elemental skill, we got a damage of 3767. When using her ultimate/elemental burst, we got about 443 damage per tick, and there are about 2 ticks per second. When combined with overload, each overload hit was 1150. And finally, on charged attack, she did 1866 damage per charged attack hit. This set is both simultaneously the best DPS we're going to pull in our average combo and the worst overload we're going to get out of all the sets we test. On to the next set, we tested 2 Thundering Fury and 2 Wanderer's Troop. This set was more focused on elemental mastery than attack percent because I wanted to see how Lisa would perform in a build where she just switches in, does a couple hits, and then switches right out. Overall, Lisa's DPS with this set ended up being around 728 damage per second, with an elemental skill charge damage of 2972 and a charged attack damage of 1480. Her elemental burst has 2 ticks per second, which ticked 385 damage each tick. The overload here is really interesting though, because on hit we got 1857, which is much higher than our initial overload. If you have a consistent stream of elemental damage, like maybe Xiangling's E or Kaya's elemental burst, or just anything that will consistently combo with electric for that combo damage, this set is going to do an average of 700 more damage per hit. But again, that's only with other elemental procs, that's not just in general. The next and final set we are testing is the 4 Thundering Fury set with a fairly low elemental mastery. My Fury artifacts were the lowest level, and I specifically used them to see how much that percentage really increased our damage by for overload. So let's check it out. On Lisa's standard stream of attacks, she did 667 DPS against the Golem with a charged attack of 1584. Her elemental skill did a damage on charge of 2862, and her ult damage per tick is 303 with 2 ticks per second. On Overload, with extremely low elemental mastery, we got a damage of 1552. I think the thing that's really impressive to me about the Thundering Fury set is that even with a fairly low elemental mastery compared to the Wanderer's Troop set, we still got an insane overload damage, which leads me to believe that if I had the 4 Thundering Fury set with high elemental mastery, this overload damage would be absolutely nuts. We can now compare all of these sets that we tested because we have all the damage numbers for them, and here's what I think. There are essentially 2 ways to play Lisa. The first way is that you can switch her in for burst damage and procs. This is basically just playing someone who can keep up elemental damage of one element and then switching into Lisa to do as much damage in combination as you can. In this style, she doesn't stay on the field very long. The second way you can play her is to have her stay out for consistent damage. In this case, she could even be a primary DPS, but it really depends on how you build her. If you're playing her the first way, I recommend going all out on Elemental Mastery and using the 4-piece Thundering Fury set. The thing is, because of Lisa's character, she is consistently able to put out electro damage, which means that she doesn't have to use her elemental skill to proc those reactions. If you think about it this way, her DPS was overall lower. However, if you add the 1552 overload we had every single hit over on the DPS chart, you're going to get an absurd amount of damage in comparison to what we had with the Gladiator set. However, if you don't have another primary DPS, or if you would rather just use her elemental skill and spam her normal attacks, I would go with the 2-piece Fury, 2-piece Gladiator set because it just increases her attack percent, but you still get to keep the electro damage buff, which benefits her every attack. When I test DPS numbers, I like to keep everything as consistent as possible, just to make sure that there's no other variables that are changing the numbers we're getting. That's why I used the same weapon for every single test, and now I'm going to talk with you guys about free-to-play options and non-free-to-play options for weapons that will benefit your Lisa build. If you're a free-to-play player and MiHoYo cursed your very first 5-star poll with a Lost Prayer to the Sacred Winds book, now is your time to shine. This book is extremely powerful if you are running the Gladiator set rather than the Elemental Proc set, because you will have Lisa out in combat for a long period of time, which means your elemental damage will increase by 8% every single 4 seconds at a total of 32% bonus elemental damage. On the same cursed gacha tangent, if you get the Eye of Perception, this is actually a fairly good ability too, as it acts as most of the best claymores and swords in the game do. Once every 12 seconds or so, you have a chance to shoot out a Bolt of Perception, which deals 240% attack as damage and chains to multiple enemies. This is another weapon that's good with the Gladiator set, however, it's not as good with the Elemental Proc set. Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers is a fairly strong book, but not for Lisa. It's a strong book for the other character that you're going to switch into after Lisa. At max refinement, characters who enter the field have their attack increased by 48% for 10 seconds. It doesn't help Lisa do more damage, but it will help you when you switch off Lisa, which means that it is good for the Elemental Proc build, where you're going to come in, proc some elements until the first cooldowns of the initial character are up, and then switch right off of her for bonus damage. And it's free to play. Emerald Orb is another free to play weapon that is absolutely incredible if you are using an ice character to proc your elemental attacks. It gives elemental mastery as its base stat, and upon electro charge, it can increase attack by up to 40% for 12 seconds at max refinement. Twin Nephrite is bad. Magic Guide is a perfect weapon for Lisa in free-to-play if you are playing the switch in switch out game. It has Elemental Mastery as its primary stat, and its ability increases damage against enemies affected by Hydro or Electro by 24% at max refinement. The biggest thing to note here is that Lisa is an Electro character, so they will almost always be affected by Electro. In addition to that, it increases damage against enemies rather than your attack stat, so that means that it increases damage after calculation. If you hit them with a 1000 hit, you will hit them for 1240 the next time. I wouldn't recommend the Prototype Malice, but if you are going to craft a book, I think Mapamare is also one of the strongest books in the entire game. Triggering an elemental reaction gains an 8% elemental damage bonus for 10 seconds at Refinement 1, and at Refinement 5 it grants a 16% elemental damage bonus, which stacks twice. Keep in mind that this is elemental damage and not attack, which means that it's going to scale based on the damage you do. Mappa Mare has Elemental Mastery as its primary stat as well, so that means that you will be chillin' as far as the elemental reactions go. Overall, in my opinion, if you are going with option 1 for Lisa and switching her in for burst damage and procs, the best weapons in order are going to be Mappa Mare, Magic Guide, Emerald Orb, and Tales of Dragon Slayers. And the only reason that Tales of Dragon Slayers is that low on the list is because it gives you HP percent as its standard stat. If you prefer option 2 to have Lisa stay out and do consistent DPS, then I would recommend Lost Prayer, which is a 5-star, so obviously if you don't have it, move down to the next one, which is going to be Eye of Perception. And if you don't have that one, because it's not craftable, Twin Nephrite's probably going to be your best bet. But this is also part of the reason why I feel like Elemental Proc Lisa is going to be much stronger. If you haven't gotten your Battle Pass weapon yet, Solar Pearl is going to be better for playstyle number 2 than playstyle number 1, but it will work out in either build, and I think it would be better than all of the other playstyle 2 options except for the 5-star book. Now, I know we already talked about artifacts, but I wanted to talk about substats after we discussed the 2 different ways of playing Lisa as described in this video. Substats are extremely underrated, and you should definitely try to get the right artifacts with the right substats once you get to a high enough level to farm 5-star artifacts. If you are playing Lisa in the style 1 way where you're going for elemental procs, you want to use Elemental Mastery, Attack Percent, Attack, and Energy Recharge in that order. Building crit is okay here, but you can't crit elemental procs, so I just don't think it's worth it, but it never hurts on auto attacks. In the Style 2 variant, you can use either the 2-piece Gladiator and 2-piece Thundering, or you can use the 2-piece Berserker and 2-piece Thundering and try to go for a crit build, which I think would actually be more powerful, and with the following substats: Attack Percent, Attack, Crit Rate, and crit damage. Ultimately, how you play Lisa is going to be up to you. You can charge her elemental skill with a crit build and high attack and everything, and she will hit like a truck. She will hit absurdly high numbers. But I do feel like that way of playing her requires her entire team composition to fit around her, whereas here she can fit into a lot of different team compositions. I think playing her for elemental procs is extremely strong, and you should definitely run her as a secondary DPS with either a fire, ice, or hydro character in the first slot. Keep in mind, Jinkyu is one of the most common characters to get right now from the banner, so definitely look into that if you're looking for a hydro character that's melee. Anyways, that about wraps it up for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed and learned some new ways to play Lisa, and hopefully you can make her pretty dang buff in your team comp. Let me know what kind of builds and what characters you want to see me do guides for down below, and I will try to put out some more of those. I have some great ideas lined up for the next patch, so keep your ears peeled and your eyes tuned. If you like my content, make sure to drop a sub down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.